Searching Swifters, it's Prof G, and in this lesson, the G stands for Geocoder, because we're going to work with a geocoder object to perform reverse geocoding, looking up place information like name and address by using latitude and longitude coordinates. We'll refine our location and place lookup demonstration app, improving our user interface and learning a few more techniques along the way, so let's locate some big learning. If you're new here, welcome. You might want to check out the full playlist to see how we got here. Now, at the end of our last lesson, we got location coordinates working, and we implemented a place lookup function that shows results as we type, and these searches are debounced so we don't hit Apple's rate limit. And to show you where we're headed, by the end of this lesson, we'll convert our location manager coordinates to a place and address, and we'll add the content unavailable view so that when we don't have any search results, we see the little pin with a slash through it, and when the user finds items that they're looking for and wants a particular item to be passed back, if they click on that item, this view dismisses and the parent gets the information that was selected. So let's code this up. Now, in our content view, we want to display a place, a name, an address, and eventually we'll plot the coordinates on a map. Now, the place might come from two sources. We might get a location from the location manager and convert that to a place object with an address and a place name. We haven't done that yet. Or we might pass back a selected place from our place lookup view. We haven't done that yet either. So let's start first by creating a place object on the content view that can hold the current or selected place. And we won't initialize that since that'll come from the location manager when we first start to run our app. So we'll declare this with @state var selected place : P place ? Since it'll be nil when the app first starts. Now we'll handle a situation where we might pass back a selected place from the place lookup view. So let's head over there, and the way we'll pass back a selected place from our place lookup view is we'll create a binding variable rather than a state variable. So up top we'll say @binding var selected place : P place ? And this value is going to be passed from the prior view, but we don't really care about what it was in the prior view. But by using @binding, this will allow us to pass that value back and update whatever was on the previous view. Now we also need to make a bunch of changes to get this to work. There are a few errors that are going to show up. We'll start with the preview provider down at the bottom of this view. So I'm going to backspace over the place lookup view and start to retype it. I see now I get an option with location manager and selected place. I'll select that. For the preview, we'll create an empty instance of location manager with L, M location manager, open and close curlies, and then tab over to selected place. And because this is a binding value, we actually have to use the dot constant in here. So we'll say dot constant, then we'll create an empty place. But to do that, we need to pass in a map item. So inside map item, we'll say mk map item, open and close parens. And we've got a lot of closing parentheses in a row here. If I counted properly, I think we've got 4 of them. But we've still got errors up here. I'm going to click on the error circle in the upper right-hand corner. And not surprisingly, we got to jump back to content view. Let's head there. And oh yeah, we've now got to pass in our selected place. That's because our place lookup view now has the uninitialized binding value. So I'll just say comma as I start to type in selected place. It pops up here. And after the colon, I'll say $ selected place because that's a binding value. We're not really using what we pass in, but by saying $ selected place, the binding value that we click on will eventually be sent back here and we'll be able to display it. Errors go away. Our search in the preview is functioning, looking good. Now what we eventually want to do on our place lookup view is we want to detect when a user has clicked on a selected place that they found via search. Then we want to dismiss this view and pass it back to our content view. So let's do that now. We'll head over to the place lookup view, and we want to detect a tap if we tap on any element that's inside the list. So right underneath the closing curly of the VStack that's inside this list, we'll say dot on tap gesture, open and close curlies, and we'll set selected place equal to place. Remember, that's the place up here inside of our list of places that we get back from our search. And after the place is selected, we'll just say dismiss, open and close parens. Now, because that's a binding variable, we want to pass it back to our content view. Now, what we're showing up here at the top of the content view is just the location coordinates, the latitude and longitude. But what we really want to do is we want to show a place in here. That should include a place name and a place address. Now, we don't currently have a way to take coordinates and convert that to a valid place, but let's set that up with a new initializer for place. So we'll head over to the place model. And we're going to create another initializer down here to initialize a place from just coordinates. Now, if this were a class, we'd call this a convenience initializer with the word convenience. We don't need to do that with struct. But here we're going to say init, and in between parentheses, location : and the location we get from the location manager is a CL location, so that's what we pass in. After parens, this is an async function, and we'll say open and close curlies. Now, this process of identifying a place from its latitude and longitude is referred to as reverse geocoding. Now, in order to reverse geocode, we need to create an Apple object called a geocoder. So we'll say let geocoder equals CL_geocoder, and we see code completion says an interface for converting between geographic coordinates and place names. Cool, that's what we want to do. Select the option with open and close parens to create the object, and this process of reverse geocoding is async. That's why we declared the initializer as async, and it could potentially throw an error. So we'll do this inside of a do open and close curlies catch open and close curlies. And when we reverse geocode, what we're going to get back is a place mark, that data-rich object that's got all sorts of information, including the title and the address. So to get back this value, we're going to say guard let place mark equals try, since it might throw an error, await, and now we'll use the geocoder. So we'll say geocoder dot and start to type reverse geocoder. This is the option we want. Select the one with just the location that's passed in. It's a CL location, which is what we pass into the initializer. And this says submits a reverse geocoding request for the specific location. Now, curiously, look at what this returns. It returns an array of CL placemark objects. We don't want an array. We just want the first value, which is in here. So let's press return. The CL location value that we pass in is going to be the location that we passed into this initializer. Then to get the first value in the array of place marks we get back, we'll just say dot first. Remember, dot first might show up as nil. It shouldn't in this case, but that's why we have this inside of a guard let statement. And I'll say else open close curlies. And I've never seen this fail, but just in case it does, we'll say self.init and we'll select the option with map item. If we get nothing back, we'll just pass in a generic mk map item open and close parens. Then return since we didn't meet the guard criteria. Now, most of the time, we're going to get back some glorious goodness from that place mark. Now, in order to initialize a new place object, see our initializer up here, this wants an mk map item. Now we can get that from our place mark. We'll say let map item equals mk map item. There's an option here where we can pass in a place mark. Now this wants an mk place mark. Slight bit of trickiness in here. The objects that we got back are a CL place mark. MK placemark is a subclass of CL placemark, meaning it's got all the CL placemark stuff plus some additional MK placemark stuff. It's a bit of a quirk, but we need to do a simple type conversion in here, converting the CL placemark to an MK placemark. And so what we do in here is we type in MK placemark, select the option with the CL placemark, and inside the CL placemark will simply be placemark, the object that we got back from the guard let statement above. And now that we got this, we're inside of our place class, so we can call our place initializer. Say self.init, select the option with the map item, and you see what this is going to do. And now that we've got our map item, we can call our initializer up here, and we're going to pass in the map item constant we created above. We've got a new place that we've created from our coordinates. Cool. Now we do have to deal with a potential failure in here, and I've never seen this fail before, but if we do, we'll simply print, and in between quotes, I'll say angry emoji, globe emoji, geocoding error, string interp, error.localized description. Now I still want to return a map item, even if it's a bogus map item that's got nothing inside of it, so I'll say self.init, select map item, and I'll pass in mk map item, open and close parens. And that's it. So let's head back to our content view and use this ombre hovene that we just created. Now when our app first starts, we actually declare an initialized location manager, so this handles getting our location, but we want to take any location we receive and create a valid place so that we can display the name and the address of our location in the view. Now we could do this a few ways, but I'm going to choose to do this inside of a task block. We should only need to convert that location from the device once when the view is first created, since most of the time what we really want to do is we want to look up places and then have that selected and shown here. So down below the V stack, I'm going to add just above the dot sheet, I'll say dot task in between the curlies. Now we should have the user location and have handled authorization when we initialize this value, but we'll double check that we've got the user location when the view appears, and we can handle creating the place if we've already authorized location use. So in here we'll say if let location equals location manager dot location, and between the curlies, if we don't get nil, we'll say selected place equals await, and then we'll initialize a new place, capital P place, with the location option by passing in our location. Now one of the tricky things that could happen here is that when the location manager updates the location, we're not going to see that information in the VStack where we want to update our new place. Now the way that we're going to handle this is we're going to create a callback function inside of our location manager. This function is going to perform the equivalent of calling back to this view when it has the location. And this is how we do it. Now I've chosen to use the callback function here. I think it's the easiest way to implement this, but there are other techniques. So we'll do this in the location manager, and essentially what we want to do is code a function that's going to alert another view that we've got a new location. So we'll code this up, and the callback function is actually a variable. So we'll say var location updated colon. Now when we mention this, we're going to pass in a CL location, but it's not going to return anything. So we say CL location arrow void I'll surround this whole thing with parens. You didn't really need the parens around CL location, but it's common to see that. But I'm going to put a question mark at the end because we might get a nil. So this variable is actually a function that can be called passing in a location. Now I actually want to use that inside of our didUpdate location function down here. Remember, this is one of the delegate functions that Apple gives us, but we fill in what it's supposed to do. So this is called when we get a location. It's called by the operating system. And just below we set the location to the new location, I'm going to call the callback function to indicate that we've updated location. And the way that we do this is we just say location updated question mark, and in between parens we pass in new location. So this acts kind of like a notification that tells the world, hey, I've got a new location. Now the real magic is we follow the location updated property with curly braces that we should execute when that location is updated. Again, it acts sort of like a notification, but it's really easy to program. Now there's one more very important thing I want to point out. In our context, we want to uncomment out this option here so that we stop the location after we've got it the first time. And the reason for that is that in our app, we really only need to get the location once when the app opens. If we were tracking the location constantly with GPS, we'd want to leave this commented out and constantly get the location. But in our app, if we leave it uncommented, then we're going to get the location periodically, and that'll stamp out any location that we might have selected, and that's not what we want. So we're going to uncomment this here so that we only get the location once. Now let's head back to our current view and make sure that we can use our new location to identify a place. We say location manager dot location updated. Now that property is actually a function, and it's going to go off when the location has been updated. So what we'll do is we'll say equals here. Code completion knows what we want to fill in. It's curly's location in, close curly's. So we're passing in that new location that we just got. This is invoked from that delegate method that Apple calls whenever it's got a new location. And at this point, we now know that we have a new location, so we can use it to update the selected place. This happens inside of a task command because that initializer is an async method. We'll say capital T task, open and close curly, selected place equals await capital P place, select the option with location, and pass in location. Now you might look at this and think that it's a little weird because even though our location manager is observable, we didn't trigger when the location was updated. This is the reason I use the callback function here. Now we know when the location has been found, it's been updated, and we created a new place. So let's show that place. And this might be clear to you, but the callback is not an async task, but we have an async task inside of this with our initializer, so that's why we use this task call. I thought I'd point that out because it looks kind of weird we have a task inside of a dot task. So now I'm going to head up here to the VStack, and I'm going to delete this old text value in the print statement. I'm going to replace this with another VStack inside. In between parens, I'm going to say alignment colon dot leading, and in between the curlies, I'll add two text fields. The first one, text between parentheses, I'm going to pass in selectedplace.name. Again, the selected place could be a nil value. Xcode recognizes this, so it adds the optional chaining, the question mark after the selected place value. That also means we've got to use nil coalescing, so double question mark after this. And if we get a nil, which we shouldn't, I'll pass in the string n/a. And we'll set this to .font.title2, and we can see stuff is showing up in the preview. Below this, we'll add text passing in selected place question mark .address. Again, the nil coalescing, double question mark followed by n/a. This is going to be .font.title3, .foreground style, .secondary. And look at that. The default location is reverse geocoded. We can see it as Apple Park, which is at 1 Apple Park Way in Cupertino. Nice! And why don't we show the coordinates down here? We want to hide these and show these on a map instead at some point, but for now, I'll just say text, and as the string, I'll pass in string interp, comma, string interp. The first one will have selected place, question mark, .latitude, nil coalescing to 0.0, and the second one has almost the same thing, selected place, question mark, .longitude, nil coalescing to 0.0. Now we're seeing the coordinates for Apple Park show up too. Nice! So we can pull up our location search, but there are a few more things I want to do on this page to pretty up the user interface and make things function better. So let's head over to PlaceLookupView. Underneath searchable, one of the things that I want to do is I want to disable autocorrect. That's just with the .autocorrection disabled modifier, open and close parens. Now right now when we don't have any search results, we're seeing an empty screen. And another thing I'd like to do is to show a content unavailable view if there's nothing inside the list. So we can use Apple's content unavailable view for this. Now sometimes you'll see content unavailable added in an overlay below a view, and that's a really nice technique, but it doesn't work very well in this situation with lookups. I find sometimes I get the content unavailable view while I still have some elements lingering in the list. I'm not really sure why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a conditional inside of the VStack just above the list. At some point you might want to refactor this, putting the entire content unavailable view in the list view in a sub view, but for now to get things working, we'll just add it right here. So the condition where I should show content unavailable is if search text dot is empty, open and close curlies, and below this I'll say else open and close curlies. I'm going to put this entire list through its list style in the else condition, so cut that out, paste it below. But if my search text is empty, I'll enter a content unavailable view. I've got a bunch of different options in here. I'm going to select the option with the title and the system image. Again, this is just a nice SwiftUI way of creating an interface consisting of a title generated from a localized string and a system icon, and use this under conditions where you don't have anything to show the user. Perfect use case right here. I'll select this, and the string I'm going to pass in is going to say no results, and the system image is going to be mapbin.slash. And this is unexpected, so I guess the navigation title doesn't like working with this if-else condition in here, so I'm just going to take the whole if-else and embed it inside of a group, and that fixes the error. But there's our content unavailable view, and it looks nice. You can perform some searches, clear things out. We see our content unavailable view. Try that a few times. Looking good. So now let's head back to our content view and try this from scratch. Click on location search. Nothing showing up. We see content unavailable view. Let's enter a search. I'll enter Shake Shack. The results show up here, and because we're searching on a region from Apple's default region around Apple Park, we're seeing Shake Shack results from the greater Cupertino area in California. Click one. Those selected results are passed back. They're shown in the content view. Nice. I can search for El Pelon Taqueria, which is very close to me on the East Coast. I don't see any El Pelones, but I see Taco El Pelones, which are in California. Those are in the search region that's around Apple Park. Remember, we set up our search region for about 10 kilometers. Now, again, it's a little mysterious. Search results are sometimes showing up way outside of that area. Apple's documentation says to look at the region that's passed into the search to limit the search as a hint as to where to find the search results. The bigger the search region, the more results you're likely to find. Now, let's see what happens if we build and run, and I deleted the app on my simulator so that I can see the request for user location authorization pops up here. We see in the back NANA00 is showing up as our place because we haven't selected a place yet. It hasn't been found by the location manager. I'm going to click always allow using app, and I've set my simulator to use the custom location coordinates of Fulton Hall at Boston College. It seems Apple's search lookup doesn't say Fulton Hall, but it does say Boston College. This is the mailing address of Boston College. Fun fact, there are two lies about Boston College right in the name. One is it's not in Boston, it's technically in Newton, Massachusetts, or the village of Newton that's known as Chestnut Hill. At least that's the mailing address. Half the campus actually goes over to Boston. We have a Brighton campus, which is in Boston too. And it's not a college. It's a Tier 1 research university with a Nobel Prize winner. College can mean something different in the United States, but we are a multi-college university. There's another university down the street named Boston University. That is definitely not us. They're considered a rival. But if you're from BU and you're using these videos, code on, young hacker. Everybody's welcome. So now let me search on Shake Shack, and the region that's passed in is around Boston College. We see Shake Shack locations, including the one up the street, which is on Boylston Street, which is Route 9 in Newton. It's about a 15-minute walk from campus, a nice way to walk off the burger afterward. We can search for El Pelon. We see an option on Commonwealth Ave, which is right next to campus. Click that. It shows up in the simulator. All is looking great. Another rec I've got for you is the White Mountain Creamery. Back over 35 years ago, the woman that would become Fabulous Mrs. Gallagher and I were both Boston College students. I brought some of that White Mountain Creamery over to her apartment. We've been married over 30 years. We've got 3 kids. That stuff is amazing. I'm a big fan of the White Mountain Creamery. So Swifter, we covered reverse geocoding, we used a callback function, our location and search lookup demo app works well. There's a lot more we could do here, but I hope you feel you've learned big. Be sure to come back, there's more goodness on the way, and continue to hack.